there is a very specific kind of person that can A, make sense of DeFi and in its entirety, and B, be interested in it. And then, you probably are one more characteristics added to those two things, which is that you can now do something to and build things in DeFi. So who is this person? Who is this mythical person? And should there be an effort to get more people, to care about DeFi and thereby also contribute to it? Okay, so we're back. Web3 normies. We actually frighteningly consistent with this, Prashant. I did not expect us to be like on it, but I think that's more to you than me. But
to everyone who thinks we don't have any other work, it's absolutely wrong. We are putting over hours, extra hours in getting this done.
Sure. Anyways, we have a really good guest today with us, Karan Ambwani, who's the head of the dYdX Foundation in India. It's really good to have you here. We've been seeing dYdX kind of be at the forefront of DeFi for many years, and it's good to speak to a representative from there. We have a bunch of questions, but Karan, I'll kick this off kind of making it about you. You actually ran a DeFi protocol before you got into this. So how was that transition like? Like, what got you into Web3? What got you to start up in Web3? Like, who in their right minds would do that? And then how did that lead to dYdX?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for inviting me, by the way, guys. It's really a pleasure to be on this podcast. Always excited to talk about DeFi, dYdX, anything in general, like in the Web3 space, right? So my personal journey has been interesting because I got into Web3 more not from a choice, but more because I was interacting with a few people who were building in this space or essentially investing in this space. So back in the day, this was like 2015, I was working on a machine learning product. I was working on a facial recognition product. I wanted to start a company there, but the idea that I had was not the best one, I would say. It wasn't something that could like find product market fit very soon. A bunch of investors that I was talking to, they said, you know what, why don't you, like, this doesn't make any sense. One of them said, why don't you just join my company? I'm leading this, investing into this new technology space called blockchain. This was in 2016. Almost like spending almost 1 year in building my own product. What I realized is, okay, fine, this is not going anywhere. I think what this guy is saying makes more sense. I think let's explore blockchain. So he was starting the accelerator, and I started as one of the portfolio managers for his company to essentially understand the technology, researching into the space. And that's how I got into it. And I was looking at many different layer one products like Neo, EOS, Ethereum, all the new products that were coming up. Ethereum was also new like in 2016, but that was one of the ecosystems that started picking up. I got super interested in Ethereum. I joined Consensus in 2018 when they started their India operations. They were looking at like getting into a lot of enterprise blockchain sort of use cases, and Consensus being a big organization in the space. That's where I actually got like a lot of exposure in Web3. Met a bunch of like highly intelligent people, and that's what made me feel that, okay, probably this space is going somewhere. There are a lot of like some of the best minds I have come across in this are actually working in Web3 now. So that's how I got excited. Worked with Consensus for a couple of years, then got more excited about like protocols, where I started my journey into joined a protocol, was leading their global strategy. Then DeFi summer came, and of course, like that was an aha moment for me that this financial technology, what the entire blockchain space has started from Bitcoin, is essentially sort of a financial product for exchanging value. I thought that, okay, this domain of finance and this technology of blockchain kind of is where I want to be. Started this initiative with a couple of team members called Open DeFi, and where I had a privilege to interact with multiple early products like Aave, Balancer, dYdX. They were all part of this consortium that we were forming for DeFi companies to essentially understand the technology, do a bunch of projects to increase liquidity in the space, also like understanding risk and safety concerns in DeFi, and also like coming up with new innovations in DeFi. That's where I got like deep into DeFi 2020, 2021. I also got sold on this app gen thesis. I think this was one of the podcasts that I heard from Balaji early 2021. And he was talking about, okay, you know what, a lot of protocols will have their own chains that would kind of interact with each other. And that's when I decided, okay, you know what, I'll build something on a layer one. That's when I started building my own product. Ran it for about a year, raised good capital for it as well. But of course, like with a new ecosystem, there were multiple challenges. And I came across dYdX doing something similar in the space. And of course, dYdX was one of the leading players. So I thought maybe the best would be to, if I want to contribute the maximum, what I can do is join a big organization which is going to put a bigger impact. And that's how I got into it. And have been like, of course, like learning, building, contributing with different like DeFi ecosystems since I've started. Yeah, that's a very quick and long introduction about me and how I got into it.
Just to ask, is the ML part of your cycle going to come back with all this ChatGPT stuff that is going on?
It keeps on going in the back of the mind for sure. I think there are a lot of people are talking about now delegating to AIs, how AIs would participate more in governance. I think there are so many crazy ideas. Okay, I think I skipped one story in between, and if you allow me one more minute, I'll tell you why I joined. Why I joined Consensus was, this was in IIT Delhi that Joe Lubin, who was the founder of Consensus, he came to give a talk on machine-to-machine economy, and this was early 2018 or I think 2017, if I remember correctly. And that was actually very enlightening, like how he said most of the things that we are doing in crypto, most of the things like around this technology is actually not for humans, it's for machines. Because like this, we keep on saying UX is bad in Web3. Maybe that's because it's not meant or to be read by humans. It's meant more to be like implemented by machine. And he was mentioning that how, let's say, like there would be autonomous cars in the future, and they would go to a fuel station or a electric station, whatever, to get a refuel. They won't be having an Aadhaar card or a bank account or an identity, right? They would be interacting in some sort of digital manner. And that was another aha moment. So I have had like many aha moments, or I don't know if I should give a reference of some epic, like, okay, maybe not, but people who have interacted. Or
now I
like,
want to hear the reference.
no, I was just going to say, like, there's this idea about like Vasudev's coming in your life who give you some sort of gyan or where you should be. And I think I kind of always say that that is how my journey has been in Web3.
I love it. I love that point where you were like, maybe UX is bad because it's not meant for humans. It is meant for machines. It's
Brilliant. I felt like I should say welcome to the Matrix right there.
No, but it makes so much sense. It makes so much sense. This is awesome. Anyway, I'll hand it over to Prash. We put together a few questions for you, which are very dYdX specific, but maybe on someday we should do the blockchain and AI
And Vasudev.
For sure.
At some point. Anyway, Prash, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Raghu. So, Karan, we can probably just quick start. I guess we all know what dYdX is, right? Maybe we can just kick start with what is dYdX? What is like, what have you guys done so far? I mean, you have a solid set of backers. So if you can just give us a bit of background on dYdX. And also, since you mentioned, since we, introduced you as part of Foundation, right? So you can probably also just throw some light in terms of dYdX Foundation, how are they, coming together, etc.
Sure, happy to take that up. So essentially, there, as you mentioned, there are two sides. There's dYdX and dYdX Foundation. So dYdX, if you are not aware of it, it's like a one of the biggest perpetual derivatives trading platform. So you can imagine it like an exchange you might be using, but it's run in a decentralized manner. The foundation essentially is there to grow the use and improve the governance of the protocol, right? And if I tell about the journey about dYdX, it has been one of the early companies in DeFi, I would say. It has been building for over 5 years now. It was started by Antonio, who was initially working with Coinbase, and he decided to start this exchange. And it started on layer 1 Ethereum as a margin trading platform. Then it moved to the current version, which is built on layer 2, Starkware, and that essentially like improves the scalability performance of the protocol a lot. And now dYdX as a product is moving towards what we are calling dYdX v4, which is an own sovereign chain, which will be built specifically for the purpose of trading, and that's going to be a Cosmos-based product, and that's what the entire team is currently focused on the tech side.
Got it. And before we go to the app chain side, right? So what is the ultimate vision for dYdX? I've heard Antonio saying in the past that it's not just a perp exchange. He wants this to be like the world's largest exchange. So, is there like a roadmap that you guys are working towards an ultimate vision?
Sure. So the ultimate vision for dYdX is to democratize access to financial opportunity. So it's not just what we currently have, but all sorts of financial opportunities that we can imagine. And when we say democratize access, what it personally means for me is, in my opinion, is opening these doors for users, for traders, for builders, for whether liquidity providers, institutional investors, to essentially use to build or to contribute on the protocol to make it like a leading digital assets exchange globally, right? So that's the long-term vision. And once that protocol is built, I think there would be ample of different opportunities to make it more composable, how you can interact, you can bring in more products, and this is going to become like an entire ecosystem revolving around the financial domain and digital assets space, right?
Got it. And now coming to like the switch to app chain, right? So to me, like when I started looking at dYdX a couple of years ago, it was not just about the exchange; it was also to an extent a poster child for a successful application in the roll-up system of Ethereum, right? Especially for Starkware/StarkX. So what was the thesis? And you guys were doing pretty well over there, considering the climate, etc. And you launched the token while still as a layer 2. So what was the thesis behind moving from Starkware to an app chain in Cosmos, and just any thought process and how that links to your long-term vision that you can share will be, I guess, super helpful.
So just an interesting story here, right? Like we were in New York when the announcement happened, and we were sitting with one of the guys who worked at the Cosmos Foundation. And he kept saying, like, there's a big thing coming out tomorrow. There's a big thing coming out tomorrow. And we were doing this at the Polygon House in New York, right? So when the news came out, he was like, this is it. And then you should have seen, like, it was just such a surprising thing that you would kind of go to something as perceivably chaotic as Cosmos, as opposed to going through something that's a lot more structured in the case of, say, Polygon or any one of these other chains. So I want to hear, on top of what Prashant just shared, also the reasoning behind that, and also how it would have looked like if you did go go with a more structured player like a Polygon or like a Avalanche or something like that.
Sure. And again, I'll be talking on behalf of the product team. And I have also recently joined the foundation about 9 months ago. Some of these things have been under development since long before I joined. But from what I've gathered from interacting with different members in the team, and also listening to some of the podcasts and interviews by Antonio himself, dYdX has always been one which has taken bold choices since the very start, right? It moved to layer 2 even before a lot of people were talking about it. This was early 2021. They figured out, okay, Starknet was one of the biggest or most successful technology at that point, and decided to build a product on top. And as you mentioned, I think it's still a very high performing product. We have over $1 billion of transactions that happen every day. So coming back to the point, it has always picked up what is the new thing that is happening, how the product can be improved 10x, 100x from where it is currently is, right? So most of the decisions were at the end of the day driven by building the best tech and the best product. And now dYdX, when they say like it's abandoning layer 2, when everyone is like super hyped about it, is also to like build this chain of its own that would give it more like control and power to the core contributors, to the users, to the team, to essentially go back to the core concept of sovereignty that when we talk about Web3, right? And it unlocks like building many new products on top, and also a decentralized order book, which is off chain, and it exists in this network of validators, which essentially would allow like zero gas to be paid to the network. I think that would open up a lot of opportunity for creating like a base layer infrastructure, I would say, long-term infrastructure, which would again like make it a highly scalable solution. So I'm all like sold on this app chain idea. Even before dYdX decided, I was building on a Cosmos chain. So I think it's a strong move. And as far as the progress has been going, it seems like there's a lot of interest of Cosmos ecosystem from most of our like institutional players, most of our investors, most of our users as well, to see like what the end result is going to be, right? So yeah, super excited about like looking at it.
What's the roadmap for you guys? When is the app chain going to be live? Is it Q4 this year?
Before that. So as for the latest developments, yeah, testnet is going to be launched very soon in a couple of months, and
nice.
Yeah, and the mainnet before like around Q3 or early Q4.
And once the app chain is live, right? So you will have the dYdX perps exchange as it exists anyways, but because it's now a chain of its own, will you guys be like encouraging a lot of teams to come and build on top of the chain as well, and add a lot more synergy to the overall dYdX chain in Cosmos? Is that like how you guys are seeing that someone comes and builds an options protocol, someone comes and builds, etc.? Like, is it going to be like a financial hub as a chain overall?
I would share some of my opinion. There are some of these things are not defined yet, and also it would be driven by a lot of community activity, how like the community wants to take it forward. But probably like what the trading team or the current team that is building the exchange would be looking at is at least providing what the current product is. So yes, perpetuals would be available, but there would be an optionality of like building other things on top. How soon that is available, understanding Cosmos is a very complex technology in itself. You need to enable a lot of things like IBC, CosmWasm to like bring in liquidity, to start building things on top. It will gradually and slowly come. That's what I imagine this to be. But yeah, still like, I don't want to like speculate on what exactly would be available. It's going to be taken up in a few months by the community.
Got it. Since you touched on liquidity, right? So the few rationales of moving to your own app chain is you have a much better control over gas fees. You have a lot more control on block space demand as well, that you can have all for your own, etc. Right? But you have ample liquidity as an L2 today. Most of your user base is there. So do you guys worry about how to bridge that user base and also the liquidity across to a completely new chain?
Yeah, sure. So dYdX has always been a product first company. So they have this tunnel vision of giving the best product experience, and liquidity is one of the essential elements when it comes to giving the best product experience, right? So from what I understand, and I mentioned it already, that the team would try to provide a very close experience to what the current product is. And dYdX being the leader in the space for especially like derivatives, perpetuals, and trading in general, I think there's already a lot of interest by liquidity providers, by institutional investors, market makers to support this new product vision. And liquidity should not be a challenge once the product is ready, right? Because there are market makers, institutional traders who are already out there, who are already like interacting with the chain. They are super excited to move to the new product. And giving the second thing of like very recognizable UX to the users, we can expect a lot of current users and new users to join the ecosystem as well. And once the network is more robust and it is connected by more and more bridges across like different ecosystem, different chains, through Cosmos, through like of course Ethereum layer 1 as well, I think liquidity should start trickling in, and I think we'll see a very similar sort of end user experience at the launch of the mainnet.
Yeah, Yeah, that's actually interesting, right? I mean, coming from financial services myself, like users typically gravitate to the place which has the best experience, but more importantly, where the spreads are the tightest, right? As long as you're able to enable that with your liquidity providers, I guess the users, the traders will find their way to where this is being provided. Fair enough. Do you anticipate at any point, again, this may not have been like thought just yet because like you said, you're focused on one thing, but do you anticipate going like cross chain as well once you're an app chain as well, like still come back to layer 2, go to Avalanche, etc., or do you guys think you'll be much more focused on just being like an app chain and build liquidity around that?
Honestly, I have no insights on that, whether like that's the idea or not. Again, that could be driven by the community. Community can decide how that's supposed to be built. But I believe like after the app chain is launched, it will essentially provide everything that you need for a multi-chain sort of interaction. I think it would be more cross-chain than multi-chain. But I don't assume
Right.
like there would be a product available on other networks as well. That's the approach I think what Uniswap is taking, like being available on multiple networks. Maybe that's one way to look at it. I think dYdX would have a different strategy as far as I understand.
Just
Got
a question on the India side of things, Karan. How does a DeFi protocol, or any DeFi protocol for that matter, look at India? Is it that strong traditional markets, or is it more from a hey dev talent? Maybe we should build contributor base from here. I'm interested to kind of look at that DeFi and India intersection. And where does, say in your case with DeFi, where does that, or what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. India is unique in terms of many different things, right? India has majority young population, and most of the population is digital savvy and has access to cheap, high-speed internet. Also, India is one of the countries with the biggest digital assets holding, as far as like many reports go, and maximum number of people who hold digital assets. And also, it has one of the best minds to build in that space, and that's because of our strong bias towards putting our kids in sciences, right, such as engineering and other fields for development. So I think all of those elements combined makes it a perfect country for any new technology that has as a foundation of all these elements, right? It requires good understanding of how technology works. It requires some fair understanding of financial ecosystems work. It requires a good understanding of like how to interact, use different tools and applications, which India is already like enabling through many other ways. So I think it provides a perfect bedrock, I would say, for DeFi. And it will continue to play like a massive role in dYdX journey as well. So since the start, since the product to the DAO to now like a fully decentralized open source platform that dYdX is building, I think it's going to play a very crucial role. And I keep on saying this: who understands the aspect of community-led governance or democratic decision making, then the largest democracy in the world, right? So I think India is having all the right things.
Yeah, I mean that's a good case for the decentralization story, but DeFi as such, right? Like when and this is I love hearing this every time somebody shows an Indian, how you can do maybe not the self-custody bit, but how payments happen on Web3, and they're like, I already have UPI. What's the right?
Yeah.
And then when and also I'd say that retail facing financial systems in India are actually quite good as compared to the rest of the world. So the question was, is it more of an institution-led story for dYdX in India, or is it more like a hey, extremely rich dev talent, which you, I think, kind of touched upon while you were answering it. This is a very educated, population with respect to using tools and things like that. But interested to kind of also touch upon, the traditional market side. Who's to say, is there a HDFC or one of these larger banks or one of these larger brokerage houses probably looking at technologies like dYdX with interest?
Yeah, I think there are multiple angles to this story when you ask me this story, and I can again like answer based on how things currently are. If I talk too much about how the future is going to be, I'll be speculating and I'll be like
Yeah,
predicting rather than forecasting, because this is a very new space, right? We haven't seen something like this, like a paradigm shift in tech, in finance. Uh, to take from example, okay, this has how things have evolved. This is how it would evolve. There are multiple sides to it. There is, of course, like regulatory clarity. More and more institutes want to get into it, but are they ready to get into it because of course, all the compliance things that are required on their front. We have seen some European institutions already like participating in governance, applying for multi-million-dollar grants to suggest some idea, market make, right? Uh, are the Indian institutes ready there? That's an open question. Is retail versus institute, one of the question that you asked, India is a big market for retail. We all understand that. We all understand that people want to get involved in the latest thing. They want to improve their lifestyle. They want to like not just like be there for financial returns, but also want to make sure that they are ready for this new field for their career development or skill development and other things, right? So that's another way to look at it. So it's a multifaceted question that you asked me, and there could be like an entire session we can do around it. But to give a quick answer to that would be, I think we need to understand what are the things that DeFi provides us, whether that's efficiency, whether that's transparency, rather than like the conventional opaque traditional financial systems. What are the different elements of DeFi that we can see, and how do like institutions look or would start looking at it in the future? So there was an interesting tweet by someone recently which compared DeFi to AWS. So they said that once there would be like an infrastructure or there would be an availability of liquidity and different composable tools to build things, there would be a world where financial institutes or anyone who's building a new financial product, that's whether that's a money market or any yield product, would try to use these rather than like building things from scratch, building their own systems, right? It's just like a global network available with the right sort of tools, the right sort of liquidity, the user base, the whatever you require for building a new product. And why or what would stop institutions from using something like this? How far this is going to be in the future, that's hard to say. Depends on a lot of factors, but that's how I imagine it to be at the end of the day.
Got it. I mean, this is always of interest to our audience as well. Like we don't know where this is going, so getting us, also hearing that this is just as hazy for the guys working within the thick of things, kind of gives you some food for thought as to how early we are. And I don't know how many more years we're going to keep saying how early we are, but that's how it is, I guess. Like, that's the nature of the beast, I guess.
Yeah, I know. In India, like you touched upon UPI, right, Raghu? Even financial markets, the settlement that happens on equities today is now T+1, right? So, which is one of the fastest in the world. So, it's pretty good from that standpoint, right? So we can still bring a lot of efficiency through DeFi because it's almost near instant settlement over there. But the T+1 is also done because traders don't need to deliver stock, etc. on it. They're on a intraday basis, right? So they have a lot more capital efficiency. So it's more efficiency in terms of settlement versus less efficiency in terms of capital, right? So how do we bridge for that? I'm sure DeFi or the technology underpinning DeFi is gonna be the next layer of improvement for financial architecture. We can, I think, bring someone from TradFi as well to discuss this in a lot more detail. But yeah,
I can already predict how that's going to go. Why do I need this? I have everything I need.
Yeah, actually, that's an interesting way to look at it. So Prashant and also Raghu, what you mentioned is you talked about like the end user story about, okay, how does the transaction go through? Okay, it goes through in an efficient manner. But we need to understand the underlying, all the institutions that are involved, how a particular asset gets listed. There are so many different process steps that we don't see as like on the surface, right? If you talk about efficiency, it's not just going to be efficiency in terms of okay, transaction speed or something. It's going to be the entire end-to-end process. So I'll give you an interesting example. I was actually working with the land registry department back in the day when I was working with Consensus. And there was this idea, of course, like it is already there are multiple companies working on it, and it has it's one of the key ideas that we keep discussing, like land registry on blockchain or transfer of the ownership of land on blockchain, right? So we were doing this with one of the state governments, and the process that we were trying to improve through blockchain was 110 years old, and it is still the current process. Do you think, and they had like so many different steps in between, and that's just conventional for any like serious public process, right? There are witnesses, there are like different steps that you need to ensure trust. I'm pretty sure even like conventional Web 2 technologies or just like digital technologies can improve it, at least like make it like 2x faster. With blockchain, with digital assets, I think we can make it 10x faster. And if we go back to the idea back in 2015, 2016, when we were more focused on just like tech companies, we used to talk about this 10x improvement, right? Like I believe Kunal Shah or one of the early Indian founders used to talk about, like, if you can deliver a product that is 10x better, that's it. Like, it is going to replace sooner or later. Nothing else will come in between on that idea, right? So I think that's how we should be looking at this.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
the words were Delta 4 back in the
Exactly. Yeah.
The product has to at least be 4 times better to create change in behavior.
Yeah.
Karan, I have a meta question, okay? And this
Is it?
yeah, this may be a little odd, but who is the kind of person that can make sense of DeFi and also be interested in it? Because I know that like now there is a narrative that's going around that Web3 is not DeFi. DeFi is its own thing, right? And it is, don't mingle the two things. So there, I think the biggest proponent of this is Hamza from Polygon, where he talks about the two. He's the head of DeFi there, and he's like, these two are not the same thing. DeFi is its own vertical, and it goes there. And you can very clearly in crypto gatherings see that DeFi people just kind of go away separately. And A, not include the rest of us there, and B, also the rest of us probably are going to be lost in that conversation as well. Because and what I'm noticing is that there is a very specific kind of person that can A, make sense of DeFi and in its entirety, and B, be interested in it. And then you probably are one more characteristics added to those two things, which is that you can now do something to and build things in DeFi. So who is this person? Who is this mythical person? And should there be an effort to get more people, to care about DeFi and thereby also contribute to it?
So I always believe that everything in Web3 is DeFi. And now that you put it in that way, it makes me feel we should define a new term, DeFi. So why I say like everything was what everything is DeFi is because Bitcoin is DeFi, decentralized finance, right?
Yes.
Metaverse, why are we building metaverse? Or why are we building gamify things? Gamify because we want to like have asset ownership on whatever like those small game components are, or metaverse because we want to transact with other people. Isn't transaction or ownership kind of element of finance as well? NFTs at the end of the day, okay, they give us like some cloud for like putting our like whatever a picture, but also it gives us a cloud because it has good value, or there is some element of finance value or speculation there in NFT space as well, right? So I think I agree from both the sides, to be honest. Like everything is DeFi and DeFi is separate. I think both have very valid arguments. There could be people in both the like looking at it from both the angles, and that's totally fine because I think I gave a good rationale for why everything is DeFi, and you can
No,
of
that's
course like have your own opinion about that. Second thing is like if I talk from like DeFi is totally separate, I think that's also true because when I believe a lot of us started in the space around 2016, 2017, you could understand what is happening. Like Web3 was something like a small thing. You can understand, okay, there's this product being built by one company, which is in real estate, there's product being built in NFTs, there was crypto punks or whatever. Like there were like n number of products, and n was countable, and you can say, okay, there's a protocol being built for this particular thing. There's Gnosis safe being built safe. It was just like Gnosis being built for this particular thing. you can name things and everything was kind of under crypto umbrella. Now it's just hard to keep track. I personally, if I've been in DeFi for last, let's say 3 years, 2 years, I don't know what is happening on the NFT front, or when you ask me a meta question on the metaverse front, I just don't know. I can't keep up with it. And if I talk to people, let's say somebody is launching a co-op of a particular thing, and they're saying, okay, you know that there's a. Actually, I was talking to somebody today, and they told me there's a marketplace for co-ops. If you're attending a particular event, you get this NFT, and people are selling that NFT for $5. And I never heard about that marketplace. And even like some of the functional areas, like for example, managing a DAO, there are like hundreds of companies that are like launching tools for competing against Commonwealth, Discourse, like everything. There are competitors to it for managing grants. It is a huge space. So then I would say, okay, DeFi is something separate because I want to be sane, and I'll say that, okay, I'll just focus on this thing.
No, that is actually a very astute observation, right? Like I think I've always looked at public ledgers as a way of decentralizing and unbundling power derived from money, right? I think there are many kinds of power, but then whichever one has to do with directly the usage of financials, a distributed and decentralized tech kind of adds to, it kind of says, okay, who owns it, who governs it, right? Like those two questions, who owns the money, who governs the money, for that entire entity is kind of answered there well. And so all the examples that you kind of spoke about, these are things that the regular layman understands, that I pay something, I get something, I send one money from place A to place B. Even up to, I'd say, lending protocols, it still makes sense because this is something that everybody will interact with. It starts to get hazy when it gets into perpetuals, when it gets into options, when it gets into these complex financial products that we want to also be able to build it in Web3. And quite honestly, maybe when you look at volumes of all of these options protocols that are there out there, it'll very clearly show you a dramatic decline in usage, and that is because the common person doesn't know how to use it. So I feel like most of the DeFi conversations are in those murky areas, and it really it's something that all of us need to get educated upon. Prash, I'm sure this is the difference between a banker and
So my 2 cents here, right? And I've been pretty vocal about this as well. Swapping assets, lending and borrowing, even perps is more of a crypto primitive, so I would include it within that bracket of something that is a lot more easily understood. Outside of this, everything is being thought of as like, hey, this is being done in TradFi, this is a $1 trillion market, so there's a space for this in DeFi, right? What we fundamentally miss is that in TradFi, this is being done by institutions, and this is being done by extreme subject matter experts, and the ecosystem is pretty huge. People use options to as a point of leverage, but a lot of people also use that to hedge their existing spot exposures, right? Because the spot exposure is their daily course of business. When you come to DeFi, it's almost entirely retail based today, right? And even the institutions we have here are mostly institutions who are crypto native, right? So the market for complex things like options, even frankly insurance, and even more complex things beyond that, does not have a market as such just yet, in terms of like the type of people who have used it in TradFi, right? Which is why we see adoption to be fairly limited. But everything under that, like perps, lending, borrowing, and swapping, I think has like a significant market.
Yep. Thanks for that, man. Like I think that probably needs to be put out there a lot more, and maybe now we're talking it about ourselves, and we have a guest on the show as well.
So I mean, in interest of time, can just like a couple of Raghu, that was great, man. I think that was quite necessary in terms of doing 1.0 and 2.0 in a way. So Karan, like we touched upon community. You are heading the foundation in India. Would love to understand if you can share any insights on the DAO that is dYdX, and how it functions. And also, any insights you can share in terms of once the app chain is launched, how the token that is there, that is dYdX today, will operate in that new world.
Sure. I can't comment too much on the token side of things, and most of the things are anyways not defined yet. But for any of the listeners who are interested to talk about or just get a good sense of what are some of the new things that are being discussed, they can check out the forum on our Commonwealth, and there are a couple of discussions being happening on that front. In terms of the DAO, I believe and again, this is going to be, it's going to be a very open sort of system where things are going to, right now, there might be some elements that are being initiated or being led by the initial team that was set up, because just in the way things evolve in Web3 is more like a progressive sort of decentralized way, which is always effective. Essentially, building something quickly, shipping it out, getting a good brand around it, user base around it, and then slowly and progressively decentralizing it and giving the users, community members more ownership. So that's how I think dYdX has led its journey as well. When it comes to the DAO, there was a recent post that the foundation put out in terms of how we would like to see this evolving. And it's going to be somewhat of a sub-DAO sort of a structure where there would be different functional areas that would be led by different sub-DAOs. So recently there was a proposal in the ecosystem by a community team which proposed to lead a ops DAO, which would be focusing on all things operation on the DAO side. They got approval from the token holders, and essentially they have started working on this operational DAO already. They are putting together processes, how they would like to structure the legalities, the financial side of things for running the DAO. Then we already have something called as the dYdX grants, which is essentially, you can imagine it like a sub DAO in itself. It's a community-led initiative again, and there are people whoever applies for a grant, they are essentially being selected from the grants committee, and they also operate in a very DAO sort of structure. They apply for a funding from the treasury, and then they operate their things, right? So there's the second sub DAO. And there could be many other things, there could be marketing sub DAO, there could be affiliate sub DAO, there could be some of the centralized processing, who would be an affiliate or who would be a person, an influencer who wants to promote, how much percentage is paid of revenue share. All those things can be defined by, let's say, a sub DAO, influencers, or marketing. And there could be many other things that could be led through sub DAO, and that's how the structure is probably going to be on the DAO side.
No, I quite like it, and sub DAOs is, I think, a good way of going about it, because again, when it comes to DAOs, I've always believed that everyone voting on everything doesn't really make sense. If you have more subject matter experts who are looking at specific verticals or sectors, it makes more sense, right? I think we discussed this in a bit in the DAO panel that we were on together as well. So that was quite refreshing to hear from you. Final thing from my side, right? So there's a lot of competition in the perps area as well, right? Now, I look at this as you have your centralized exchanges from BitMEX to Binance, etc. Then you have, of course, dYdX and the likes, which I would put in GMX, right, as the one that has been all the rage in 2022. And then, of course, there is a third one, which is the Say network, which is coming up with its own DeFi specific layer one, right? How do you guys think of competition? Are you guys single-minded in terms of, this is what our vision is, this is how we want to go about it? Or, you think that there are certain aspects of this competition that you need to be extremely aware of and, take certain points from?
Sure. So I believe by this time in the conversation, you must have got I'm a strong proponent of DeFi. So just quickly talking about centralized solutions, of course, they work fine till a point, right? They provide you the speed, the convenience that you need. But that again needs to come with sort of guardrails for strong accountability of centralized exchanges, of regulations around them, because after all, it depends on some trusted entity or a central party or a set of individuals which make all the decisions, right? So we don't need to talk too much about centralized exchanges, because we have seen time and again what the issues are, and we don't even need to go back to the issues. We are just couple of months what happened with FTX. Since then, all the centralized, whether that's like lending and borrowing players, and even before that, in India, we saw what happened with one of the major centralized again lending platforms. So we don't need to highlight issues too much. So again, like whatever they provide, we of course look at that from a user experience viewpoint. And since like, of course, the things that happened in November last year, there has been a lot of traders or people who are like who are trading on centralized exchanges moving to decentralized solution. We saw an uptick in volumes across DeFi solutions. Even dYdX had got like many pro traders coming from decentralized exchanges, and we are continuously interacting with them. We have talked to hundreds of them to understand like what are the things that we are missing, how we can improve the product. And when I say we, it's more like the product team. We as a foundation, we help facilitate some of those discussions as well. So yes, there are things to be learned, but at the end of the day, there are many issues with centralized exchanges. When it comes to, again, DeFi or decentralized exchanges, I think there are many new innovations that are there out there. And as a product, as anyone like who is building in this space, we have to always keep a tab of what is happening, right? And I strongly believe in the ethos, and I believe like most of the people in the team believe in the ethos of decentralization, and they are looking at what other products are doing. So for example, like simple example of AMMs, not talking about perpetual exchanges, but AMMs as an idea for spot trading is simply brilliant. Like the simplicity of the mechanism and how it's completely running through a contract with a bunch of LPs and traders. I think that's something to learn from. Something if we just like keep focusing on centralized solutions, we will not get to know. So that's there. And when you talk about other competitors, for example, GMX, you mentioned about GMX or Gain, some of the new networks that are coming up. It is definitely interesting to see like what are the innovations that they are working on, how they are like growing the liquidity and users in the ecosystem, and also giving credit where credit is due, right? So we have to look at these solutions, but what we also need to look at is how sustainable some of that growth is, whether that's like just Arbitrum airdrop seekers that are coming to these solutions, or are these new mechanisms, for example, GLP, the GMX, like the engine that it works on, the mechanism that it works on, how would that phase an event like, let's say, Black Thursday that happened in March last year, once the liquidity or like the value of some of the assets drop significantly. So we have to take a balanced view. We have to look at the innovations. We have to look at the downsides of some of these solutions as well. And of course, like dYdX being the biggest exchange in the derivatives stage by far by volumes, I think we provide a lot of trust and liquidity for pro traders, and what it makes the best, I would say, in this space.
Wonderful. Raghu, over to you. If you had anything else.
Yeah, last question from my end, right? Like, what is dYdX looking? What are some of the startup-facing initiatives that dYdX has towards within the Indian ecosystem? Because I think, I don't think that India in general has made great DeFi products, but the ones that it has made have been very, very influential, right? Like, for example, an Instadap, for that matter. And I think that there are at least now, especially the new crop of people who are coming in, seem to be very aware of gaps in financial systems and markets that can be solved by Web3. So interested to know, what dYdX is doing, to help them in the coming months.
Sure, I think the immediate goal is more centric towards building a strong community, and rest of the things come along with it. Once you have a strong community who believes in your vision, who understands your technology, and they start contributing, building things on top. So when I talk about community, I think that's one of the primary focuses for us at the foundation. So when I talk about community, people who know what dYdX is, who understand the protocol and use the protocol, or the people who are like learned enough to understand different aspects of DeFi that you were saying, or who understand self-custody and how different technologies interact with each other. And also like community members who kind of help each other to navigate or support each other in essentially like using some of the technologies or navigating in this labyrinth of technology space that we work in, right? So that's the primary focus, bringing these sort of people, developing them, supporting them. Even on the Cosmos side, I think now that dYdX is moving towards Cosmos, there's a lot of interest from the Cosmos ecosystem, Cosmos projects to essentially work with us or try to understand what we are doing. And that's one of the areas that we are wanting to grow in India. That's also because Cosmos is a very small community as far as we have understood in India. And until and unless we develop the ecosystem, we support the ecosystem, there would be like very limited things that people would be able to contribute. So I think that's the strategy, or that's the idea how we are going to expand in India. And also once the protocol launches, I think the community that we develop, the Cosmos ecosystem that we build, is essentially going to be helping us like build more and more interesting tools and techniques on top. I think you're on mute.
Sorry. Yeah, I was just before we sign up, I was saying, speaking of the Cosmos ecosystem, I was at a Cosmos meetup recently, and that never happens in Bangalore. But all said and done, the quality of people who show up at these places is like really, really good.
Yeah.
I like to call that crowd as decentralization maxis who are around there, and it's a great time always. So yeah, it was really good having you here. Karan kind of gave us an eye into gave us some insight into how dYdX is getting. Then also got to know a few interesting things about you. Maybe at some point we should probably get you back on the podcast to talk about machine-to-machine economies. And hopefully by then, either within dYdX or on your own, you're probably doing something cool in that space. So looking forward to what's happening next. And thank you so much for taking time with us.
Thank you, guys. I think this was amazing. I got a chance to interact at a very personal level as well. I shared some of the insights. I think some of the things I haven't like talked too much before, but definitely would be happy to come on board next time, and wish you all the best with the podcast that you're doing. And if there's anything from our end, we'll be happy to support building the community.
Awesome.
Wonderful. Thanks for your time, Karan. And a pleasure as always, Raghu.